Welcome to Lesson 14, Adobe Photoshop CS4 New Features. There are all sorts of new features that you can find in Photoshop CS4. I'm going to show you some of them, but you will constantly come across new and improved methods of working, whether it be buttons, little new menu items, etc. In fact, you've probably seen them throughout the book if you've already completed some of the lessons. So I'm going to go ahead and launch a file, and in fact, I'll just open up this Girl Guitar, and there is a folder in your PS lessons called Random Images that has these images in it if you want to experiment. There are really no lessons in this file, so I'm just kind of showing you, giving you an overview of what's new and what you can do. Okay, starting out, you'll notice the interface, new and improved interface. It's a lot cleaner, it's a lot neater, it's a lot easier to find things, and yes, these are now called panels. Those of you who have been working in Photoshop for several versions have always known these as palettes, and they've finally made the name change. Now, using this, the docking system is not all that different. You'll notice that I can slide this in and out. I can tuck these guys into being icons or just the names. I can click on the tabs and drag these out. You will find out more of these features if you read back in Lesson 2 about the workspace. Now, something else that I just want to make clear is this new addition of the application bar across the top here. And this is where you can find things like Launch Bridge, and you rotate your canvas, and your hand tool, which is of course just your space bar as well if you like keyboard shortcuts. And then you've got your menu items and then your options. So it is a little bit different. And again, if you're going through the lessons in this book, you'll find clear instructions how to access those items. But let me just kind of jump in right now and start showing you some of the other new features. So we've got this particular image up here, and maybe I want to make a change, and maybe I've decided that I really want her to be black and white. I'm going to grab the Layers panel by the tab and pull that out, and I'm going to choose the New Fill or Adjustment Layer button and choose black and white. Comes up, and you'll see I now have an Adjustments panel. This used to be a dialog box that would come up when you wanted to make adjustments to a layer. In this case, it's a live panel. I'm going to click on the button that allows me to click and drag to modify the black and white conversion, and you'll see that when I click and drag on her neck, left or right, you see the reds. It's recognizing it as red, and it's making changes to the skin. Now I can also select the shirt, and it says, this is more along the cyan line, makes changes to that. Maybe her hair, a little bit of red, it's recognizing in there. But notice that I'm visually making this change to this image. And when I'm happy with it, I don't have to click OK. It's simply done. It's in a live panel. And of course, I can turn it off or on, just like I could in the past. But it works a little bit differently. Some of you might get confused with this. Notice that I can click on the Return to Adjustment list. And here are all the lists of items that I can apply. So if I did want to apply another adjustment to this, I could choose the adjustment from here. So if I wanted to apply a photo filter, I could click on this, and you'll see there's the orange tint that's been applied, and it actually stacks these up in order. So just again, a different way that those are applied. Now, I'm going to leave this file open for just a bit, and I'm choosing Launch Bridge from the application menu, and I'm opening up the tennis image. So let's say that I want to mask out some of these items here. I'm going to take the quick selection tool and just start painting the sky. And of course, you need to have the right layer selected. So let me click on that, choose deselect, and we'll start painting the sky. Okay, so I've got this selection here, but I'm not quite sure if I like it. In fact, I can tell right now that I need to hold down my Alt key and get some of this tennis racket back. And I am going to take advantage of the new Masks panel. So I just went to Window Masks, and you'll see that I can choose to create a new pixel or a vector mask, depending on whether I have a pen selection or just a pixel selection. And since I just used my quick selection tool, I'm adding a pixel mask. Okay, whoa, so we've pretty much knocked her out and not the sky. Don't worry, you've got an invert button right in here in this panel. Allows you to flip your selection. other great things, I can come in here and I can choose to feather this selection after I've made it. And you'll see I've got this line down here. Don't worry about that. I'll show you how to fix that in a short bit. But notice I can feather this. I can even change the density of that mask because maybe I want to show through some of that item. I can also click on Mask Edge, and Mask Edge will bring up my Refine Edge button so that I can do things such as smooth my selection, feather it in here, and of course, all that I'm doing with these controls down here is simply creating a mask so that I can see my selection a little bit better. So I'll leave it at white for this. I can contract and expand my selection and choose how much is going to be affected by my controls up here in the radius. So once I've selected this, you'll see that a mask has been added to this layer. You'll also see I've got this line down here. Now notice wherever it's black, it's covering up the sky. Wherever it's white, it's showing her through. So of course, I can just press X. See black and white down here? X. We'll swap those. Take my paintbrush, make it a little larger by pressing on the right bracket a couple times to the right of the letter P, and just painting black to eliminate that. But of course, by holding down the Shift key, I can turn off the mask. And you can see that it actually turns it off in the mask panel as well. Great. Okay, so that's your new mask panel. Another thing is improvements in your clone source panel. So let's say that I want to clone this girl, thinking of throwing the ball up in the air. All right, got that layer selected. Let me go to the custom shapes and choose, I want a thinking bubble. So I'm going to choose talk bubbles and append these. This is not new. You could always add shapes. Click on this shape, thought 1. Click up here to close that window. And maybe we're going to make her thinking. Okay. Not exactly the color I want it to use, so I can just double click on the shape layer to the left and say I really want it to be white or close to it. And now watch what I can do. I am going to take this layer and activate it. I'm going to bring up the clone source panel. I have the first clone source selected. Now this is not new. You could save multiple clone sources in the previous version. Now I'm going to alt-click on her face. That's what I want to clone. Now this is what's new. I have my rubber stamp selected. I alt-click on her face. Notice that I am seeing a preview. And if I make my brush size larger, my preview becomes larger. Brush size smaller, my preview becomes smaller. What it's actually doing is showing me exactly what I'm going to get when I clone this. Now I'm going to just close out some of these things so I can see this a little better. I'm going to play it safe by clicking on this layer and creating a new layer, face. And the reason I'm doing that is so that I can clone from this layer to this layer, and if I don't like what I'm doing, I can turn it off. But notice I can come up here, and if I start painting, you'll see a little crosshair up here on her face, and I can replicate this exactly. Now I can even take this further by changing the opacity. So if I just press 2, it's 20% opaque, 5, 50% opaque, 0 back up to 100. Let me put this at 3. And I can either use the slider or just press 3. But now she's thinking of the other girl who's thinking of throwing the ball. I know that's really interesting. But again, coming back to this, I'm going to Alt or Option click on the ball. I can bring it down, and notice how I can see that my brush size is a little too large because it's actually cloning some of the background. Bring my brush size down a bit, and maybe I just want to put on here a little bit of the ball fading in there. But again, I have that control before I actually start working in it. Now, moving on. Some other additional new items. Let's say that I want to save this image for the web. I choose File, Save for Web and Devices. This screen comes up. Of course, I have all the wonderful selections I've had in the past as far as formats in which I can save and options that go with them. What's new in CS4 is that I can now include metadata. And if you're not sure how to set up metadata, like your copyright information and EXIF information from your camera. Read through Lesson 3 on Adobe Bridge, and you'll see how that is all included. And the great thing is, of course, that even though these are web images, you can include some of the metadata with them. So in this case, if I decided I wanted to save this as a PNG 24, I could set this up, include the copyright and contact information. Don't need transparency for this. Might only need it at 200 pixels wide. And then I can save it and choose to save it again. And I will replace that. Okay, and moving on. One last thing I want to show you, and again, this is not everything that's new in Photoshop, but just kind of giving you a taste of different things that you can try. The 3D menu is incredible. I'm going to go ahead and close this file up and not save it. Go back to this image, and maybe I'll, in fact, just get rid of these adjustment layers. And I am going to take this layer and choose that I want to create a new shape from layer, and this will be a cube. Okay, I get a message saying I don't have the right video card, but that's okay. I can click OK. It's going to still work. It's going to take this item. You'll notice that I can take my 3D rotate tool, spin this around. But what's really great is the fact that I can go in here and add sides to this. So I selected a cube. You could have selected coelacanth, you could have selected donut, you could have selected all sorts of different choices such as pyramid, but I selected the cube, and you'll notice that I can double click on these textures and then choose to place other images or cut and paste them. It doesn't really matter. Here, I'll take this particular guy in here. I'll make him a little larger so you can see how he appears. I'm going to save it, Control S, and I'm going to close it. And you'll notice that if I spin this around now, what I've actually done is I've included him as an additional texture. And I can see back material, front material, top material. Let me just go to another one, top material. And in this case, I will place another image. And in this instance, I'll put the sheet music. And again, I'm stretching these out just to show you a demonstration of how this works. Save and close it. And now you'll see that we've also added the sheet music. So lots of neat things that you can do with 3D images in Photoshop CS4 too. So have lots of fun, play with all these new features, discover all the new ones as you're working. It's great stuff.